Shannon Sharpe insinuates that the Miami Dolphins should blow up the roster. That is going to be the main discussion on today's show. If Miami should do that, reacting what Shannon Sharpe did say and what could be the possible avenue Miami goes in the offseason to at least improve the roster next season if they don't blow it up. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And before we hop into today's video, could you help us out and spread the word of the channel? Share this video to a friend, family member, coworker. We're trying to push out our reach here to more Dolphins fans. And if you have a Dolphins fan that doesn't know about our channel or needs to be more informed around the team, well, make sure you do share today's video. It would be greatly appreciated. All right, let's hop into what Shannon Sharpe said about the Miami Dolphins on the Nightcap. Says, do I believe Tua is going to stay healthy? Well, without Tua, you're not going anywhere. I don't care if you got Waddle. I don't care if you got Hill. And he talked a lot about injuries and how this team could really bounce back if Tua isn't playing. Like, he also mentioned how much you paid others, like Teron Armstead, like Jalen Ramsey. And then he specifically said, if you're the Miami Dolphins organization, do you seriously look over the next 3 seasons with Tua? Will he play 51 games? That would be 17 games a year, obviously the regular season. He says, how many times has Tua done that in his career? Well, he's done it once, did it in 2023, obviously not happening this year. And his whole basis of his argument and what he was basically saying is that he doesn't believe this team will be able to win a Super Bowl because he doesn't think Tua will be healthy for all 17 games, which will put them at a disadvantage in the postseason, having to travel in the playoffs and have an unsustainable path to the Super Bowl every single year. And I don't disagree with Shannon Sharpe. Like, with Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, it's going to be tough for Miami to be the best regular season team out of those 4 and have a top seed where the teams have to go through Miami to get to the Super Bowl rather than the Dolphins having to go on the road. And I will say this, though, and when it comes to Sharpe insinuating that they should blow up the roster, it's very difficult for them to do so, and I get it's frustrating. I get you're 2-6 and that you want changes. I want changes. I might still get rid of Chris Grier in the offseason, but the moral of the story is this, is that with how the roster looks right now, with how the contract situations are looking going into the offseason, it's going to be very difficult to blow it up if you're the Miami Dolphins, because if you do move off some of these key players with big contracts, you really don't save as much money as you probably would think you would due to dead cap and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a tough decision for Chris Grier to make, which we'll outline here in just a second. But today's pinned comment, make the call. Should the Miami Dolphins blow up the roster? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Like I said, it's the pinned comment, so if you get hit with a YouTube ad break, scroll down, let it play, and answer today's question down in the comment section. And before we continue here, I do think it's important to discuss what blowing it up would actually be for the Miami Dolphins. When I look at the roster, I look at the cap situation, this is what I would consider blowing up this team. One, it would be getting rid of Tyreek Hill via trade or Bradley Chubb via trade. Now, I know Chubb hasn't played this year, but he's one of your biggest contracts and one of your projected impact players on this team. So those two, at least one of them being gone, would be a pretty massive change to this group. But I'd also add one of Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel going. And I'm sure this isn't blowing up the roster if you get one of McDaniel or Chris Grier gone, but blowing up, at least in terms of the thought process, the organization, that is a key aspect in this idea. And when you look at what could happen here, and you talk about why I don't think it's really a likely outcome that Miami blows up their rosters because of the contracts. Well, let's take a look at Tyreek Hill's situation. And this is Barry Jackson with the note saying that there's a $27.7 million cap hit in 2025 if he's on the team. But there's an even bigger cap hit for Miami, $28.3 million, if he's traded before June 1st. It's $12.7 million cap hit if he's traded after June 1st. What's more, his $27.7 million salary for 2025 is fully guaranteed. And my takeaway from this in the financial situation is that he's not getting traded because you saw it. The only way that you really get a lesser cap hit for Tyreek Hill this season is if you trade him after June 1st. But if you're shutting contracts, you're blowing up this roster, you're likely going to make these trades in order to have money to sign people in free agency and use those draft picks to make selections in the 2025 NFL draft. Well, if you trade him after June 1st, which is the only way you get money back and don't pay him that much, well, you've already missed out on the ability to sign top-tier free agents, and the NFL draft has already passed. So trading Tyreek Hill doesn't really make a lot of sense in the offseason if the idea is to use the assets you'd get back to bolster the roster next year. So I think Tyreek Hill is staying put at least until next year's trade deadline at bare minimum. And we'll talk about Bradley Chubb in just a second. But we are sponsored by GameTime, the #1 ticketing app out there. And if you want to go see a live event, whether it's a sporting event, comedy show, concert, GameTime is the best way to get tickets because they have so many great features that make it easy to buy your tickets. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I use GameTime Picks when I bought my tickets to go to the NLCS Games 4 and 5 in New York City, as well as when I went to LSU USC in week 1 of the college football season. Make sure you get started today. Use the feature of all-in pricing, which shows you the total price of your ticket up front rather than getting blindsided by fees at checkout. GameTime is the total package if you want to get tickets to any live event. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only, but one more time, CHATSPORTS is the code when you create an account. Use that to get $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It is game time. All right. When we move over to Bradley Chubb now, it's pretty likely that he's not getting dealt either because his contract situation is eerily similar to Tyreek Hill's in terms of it just doesn't save Miami money when they need it. Well, look at what happens with Bradley Chubb. He doesn't have any of his money guaranteed in 2025, but he has a $29.3 million cap hit. And that only drops to $27.4 million on the cap if he's cut or traded before June 1st. So you only save $2 million if you move off of Bradley Chubb before free agency or the draft. It's $9.1 million in dead money for Miami if he's cut after June 1st, but the Dolphins obviously couldn't use any of that cap space when free agency is up in March. So you might ask yourself, well, if you're not going to get rid of Bradley Chubb because of the contract situation, you can't really get rid of Tyreek Hill either, then is blowing up the roster really even a possibility for Miami? Well, not really. Like, if the Dolphins want to improve for next year, it's more of retooling the roster, cutting a little bit of the fat, restructuring some contracts, and signing bargain free agents that you're going to have to hope have career years on your team next season to fit around your core of Tua, Achane, Jalen Wright, Hill, Waddle, Ramsey, Phillips, Chubb. Like, you're going to have to hit on your draft picks to get an important production from rookies right away, but also make some key value free agent signings, which it's possible to be done, but this front office is going to have to shoot a very high percentage if they want to bounce back next season. And the reason why it's so difficult and you're going to be going bargain shopping is because when you look at some of these top contracts that are on the books for next season, like, these are massive cap hits. Obviously, Tua's on the books for $39.4 million. Bradley Chubb is at $29.3. Hill's at $27. Armstead's at $22. Jalen Ramsey, $16. Jackson, $13. Phillips, $13. You have 7 players that have a cap hit of $13 million or more next season. That's just hard to build a good roster and a well-balanced roster when you're paying so many talented players top money. And that's why restructuring contracts have to work. Whether you give it a bonus, whether you give a void year and extend some money down the line, which could impact you in the future. But in order to try to compete in 2025 with this kind of core, you get more cap space to use in this upcoming free agency pool, which, by the way, isn't that good. I was looking at some free agent boards and stuff like that. Javon Holland's a top 3, top 5 free agent this upcoming cycle. And I love Javon Holland, but the fact that he's a top 3, top 5 free agent really doesn't tell you that there's a ton of good free agents out there that Miami could go sign. It's going to have to be, like I mentioned, bargain signings to where Miami gets extremely good value on some young guys or veterans that ultimately come in and make a monumental impact. But restructuring contracts is going to be very important. I'd look at a potential restructure with Teron Armstead, Bradley Chubb as well, potentially Austin Jackson to try to free up some money in the future. You're also likely going to have to cut some people. Durham Smythe, Jake Bailey come to mind that could free up a total of $5 to $6 million in cap space if both of those guys are cut before June 1st. So if you look towards the offseason, there are some avenues to create cap space, but it's not like you're going to have $50, $60 million in cap to really add to this group. But let me ask you this before I go through the 5 biggest positions of need Miami needs to improve going into next season. What is the biggest thing Miami needs to fix this offseason if they want to have a competitive season next year? Drop the biggest thing down in the comments section. I'll be looking and seeing what the real ones have to say. All right, when you look at what I think they need to do, and these are not ordered as of now, but these are 5 important spots Miami must address in the offseason. Inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker, whatever you want to say. Because next year you're projected to have Phillips, Chubb, Chop Robinson, Zach Sealer, so you think your pass rush is going to be much better next year than it is this season, assuming everyone returns and is fully healthy. So the linebacker spot on the interior is massively important. Jordan Brooks has been good, but he's on a 1-year deal. Anthony Walker, 1-year deal. David Long Jr. is going to be a free agent after this year. And Anthony Walker Jr. and David Long Jr. have been absolutely abysmal. So you're going to pretty much have to overhaul that entire inside linebacker room. You're going to have to improve that spot of your defense. You're going to like to try to add a nose tackle that can help you stop the run a little bit better to help Zach Sealer on the interior of that defensive line. We know the backup quarterback spot needs to be addressed. They need to invest decent money in a backup quarterback. So if Tua misses time again, which it's likely will happen, you have someone that doesn't completely tank the season like Skylar Thompson or Tyler Huntley filling in behind him. Interior offensive line, even though this group has been much better over the last month or so, I don't really think Robert Jones or Liam Eichenberg are future interior offensive lineman of this team. You got Patrick Paul waiting in the wings in case Teron Armstead retires. Aaron Brewer's been a great signing. Austin Jackson, a right tackle, but left guard and right guard have to be addressed. And then your safeties. Javon Holland's a free agent. Jordan Poyer has been atrocious. Marcus May's on a 1-year deal and has not done that well in stopping the run, decent in coverage. You're going to have to overhaul your safety room in all likelihood, and the same thing with your inside linebacker. So the top 2 probably in my books are inside linebackers and safeties. Backup quarterback would be number 3, and then you start to get to the nose tackle and interior offensive line as the next biggest things for the Miami Dolphins. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's going to be difficult. The Dolphins don't have a ton of cap space to make adjustments in free agency. Right now, they're projected to have $4.4 million in cap space. That does not include some cuts that can be made that could get them easily to $10 or $11 million, contract restructures that can get them to 20 maybe. I would project if I'm the Miami Dolphins and if I'm a Dolphins fan thinking about what could happen and looking towards the free agency class, I think you could expect anywhere between $15 and $25 million in cap space going into free agency. Maybe that's lowballing it, but I think that's a realistic expectation for this ball club to get from 4.4 to 20, $25 million, which would allow them to sign a potential couple, 2 or 3 free agents at a decent price, but not go big game hunting in the offseason. That's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Still dropping daily content here. We'll have you covered leading up to the Week 10 game for Miami as they travel to Los Angeles to take the Rams on Monday Night Football. So make sure you subscribe and join us for that watch party coming up.